funny how my least favorite field report on here is one from an old blog post I actually did. Midswatch guys, welcome. This one's not so much about breaking down a guy's field report. It's more of us talking amongst each other. It's a more meta discussion. And you're going to start to notice there's a few of them come to the end of the Midswatch series, which this is one of the last 30, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. But on this case, it's the starting point was a post I had done, which was kind of a collection of things I had seen from other guys and myself over all these years, was that the concept of mental models, or the idea of a narrative structure you have in your head that you anchor your decisions to. You've probably heard me talk about mental models a lot, and that's exactly what it is. We think in stories. So Christianity, for example, tons of mental models. The Good Samaritan. In fact, just like, remember What Would Jesus Do? WWJD? That's a mental model. So when you walk into a situation, you don't know how you're supposed to act. You follow the narrative, and then from the narrative, what decisions would you make from it? And it's a... like evolutionary wise, there's a whole lot of ways to go about it. Just that it's there, adjust and add it to your life if you find it's useful, and if not, don't worry about it. The post though, the original one, was just about a lot of guys would screw up because they don't know what they want. They would just do the red pill roadmap because, you know, that's what everybody else was doing. I'll just do what they're doing and I'll get what they want. I bring up examples like a guy I've talked on here a lot. His name's Ultimate Cad, and he opened up his marriage on his side. His wife, like, he basically, like, she's dead to me. I've already divorced her in my mind. The kid's got 6 years or so until they move out of the house. So for 6 years, I'm going to go get my freak on and then keep her at home and do my thing. And it worked for him, as far as I can tell. I haven't heard what's happened this year, but this would have been the year when he finally divorces her. So I guess we'll find out. Maybe he'll come back. Who knows? But yeah, so for a lot of guys, they don't think about what they want. And so they don't have a proper mental model to adopt because they don't have a direction. And so for a lot of guys, the big issue is like, and I always say, think of it like you're waving a magic wand. You wave a magic wand, and the only deal is it can't tell anybody else to do something else that they're not doing. What is it you want out of this situation? And if a guy can answer that, he's much better able to use proper, what I call OODA loops, or observe, orient, decide, act. You cycle through these fairly often, and you're able to get closer towards your goal. And all of this dread stuff and all of this married bread pill stuff eventually gets to there. So Jack kind of read it and he goes, man, this is great. Yeah, I actually use this mental technique often, which is pretty much whenever I'm agitated. It all comes down to, what do you want? And very often there's some raw emotion lurking below everything, just like any of these. And he brings up some examples I used, you know, maybe you don't want to get divorced because you want to secure your resources. You don't want to lose half of them. Maybe you want the validation that comes with somebody who desires you just for sex. You know, for us other people, maybe it stops at the validation of knowing you're seen as a top shelf man. You know, just the idea that girls are wooing over you, that's good enough. Maybe you just care about getting your dick wet. You know, and divorce and hookers are the best route. There's no right or wrong answer to any of these things. It's just what you choose. And he goes, yeah, we hate to admit things like this, which is why our mental models will sometimes place a layer over layer of supposedly reasonable thinking on top of it. But it really all is food for our own hamsters. You know, Strategos Autocrator, who's one of the oldest guys in here as far as I could tell, I think he was like number 2 on the list of joining this place, had some very great paragraphs about mindfulness in his last post about frame, and I feel this is very closely related. Until you're mindful of your base motivations behind your emotions, it's very hard to take meaningful action. So for what it's worth, I think, Ryan, this will be one of my favorite posts on the Married Red Pill, if only because it's written and organized. Substantial, yet compact and smooth, much like the protein shakes we all like to drink.
I don't usually post pictures of my kids online, but they're infants and you can barely see them, so, you know, it's fine. But a YouTuber named Ryan Stone tweeted, showing off the F trophies for clout. So the babies are trophies that I'm showing off. It's perhaps not a surprise that a picture of a proud father would be so upsetting to the sort of man who clearly never had one.
And even Strategos kind of comes back. He kind of was on his way out at this point. He's like, mindfulness is simply using the tools of understanding your own emotions enough to see them for what they really are, but not to let them affect your behavior. So it's a good one, and I like it. It's It's why whenever I see a guy talking about his marriage and he gives what I call like the Batman origin story, I always ask, like, wave a magic wand, what do you want? Nobody ever has a straight answer. They don't know. And so the first step of any guy who's unplugging has to find out what is it he actually wants, because most of the time, they just want what everybody else is doing. I just want to do what everybody else is doing. Well, what are you guys doing? Oh, I'll do that. It's like, no, that's not how it works. Some guys in the married red pill are cheating on their wives and going and having their fun. Some guys are fighting through a dead bedroom and deciding to stick it out for the kids because their religion says so. Other guys decide to leave, divorce, and go, sow their oats elsewhere. Other guys, turn everything around. Everybody's got a different path. There's like 6 specific outcomes you can get to once you started a process of dread. And you largely don't get to pick which one you're in. You just largely get to pick out of the one you're in, you get to have the trade-offs of the good things and the bad things you're at. Now, the one thing that you can take away from this post is that your emotions drive your behavior more than you think. And most of the rational and logical things you're doing are because your emotions need a veneer of respectability. It turns out, and it's great paper on this one, I won't link it, look for it if you want to, was that the whole reason human beings use logic is as a persuasive tool. It's a way of appealing to somebody's need for pattern recognition, which is something we have as an innate characteristic, right? And we love patterns. So when somebody is logical and reasonable and rational, it appeals to that emotional instinct. And this is our way of manipulating other people into doing what we want. Now, I'm not saying manipulation is altogether bad. The legal system is essentially that kind of logical manipulation, but it generally has worked out pretty well for us. There's no Mad Max roaming through the streets. So once you can understand, and this is why when I talked about frame in volume 1 in praxeology, the emotional pillar, you have to understand your base emotional needs. You have to understand your base emotions and reactions to things. And you have to understand a lot of the intellectual rigor you apply to your life is really just a post hoc justification of your emotional state. So once you can understand that, you can start putting a veneer on top of it, which is what they call a mental model, but make it one that actually works for you. Anyways, that's all I got on this one. That's all you get.